All right, sir, we are ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. We are back in session, and I'll move to our next item, which is the 2020-21 State Board of Education meeting calendar, and I'll call on Dr. Townsend Smith to present this item.
Good afternoon, board members. This is the time of year where we have to approve your meeting dates for 2021. As has been our practice the last 2 years, I have tried to avoid holidays. And since we don't have a November election to contend with this time, I have put our planning and work session back in November. And then there are a few spots where I am requesting that you have a motion to suspend your rules because those meeting dates fall outside of the piece that's outlined in policy regarding meeting the first Thursday of the month and the Wednesday preceding. So this is the update for your proposed calendar dates for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend Smith. Any questions from my colleagues on the proposed calendar? Okay, hearing none, then we do have one item of new business before we move to our voting items. As previously announced, the Board of Durham Technical Community College recently selected as their next president our own J.B. Buxton. And I'd now ask and invite you all to unmute your mics and join me in congratulating Mr. Buxton. Congratulations, J.B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. I appreciate that.
Congratulations. Well, for those of us who've had the privilege of serving with Mr. Buxton, we know that the Durham Board has made an outstanding selection, and no doubt the students and faculty there, they're not already aware, will soon discover the same. Mr. Buxton, we will at some point more appropriately and formally thank you for your service on this board. We're thankful that you'll remain with us through September, but out of respect for your new duties and the important role that Durham Tech plays in our state education system, it's appropriate that we reassign your committee duties at this time, and which will go into effect at the adjournment of this meeting. So I'm delighted to announce that the new chair of the Student Learning and Achievement Committee will be Ms. Jill Kamnitz. The chair of the My Future North Carolina Committee, who also leads the Tri-County Community College, by the way, will be Dr. Donna Tipton Rogers. And that the vice chair for the School Turnaround Committee will be Mr. James Ford. I want to thank these colleagues who have certainly earned the respect and confidence of their peers for taking on these additional leadership opportunities. And we wish you all the best, Mr. Buxton, in the months ahead. So seeing that there are no other items of new business, board members will move to voting on items requiring action from your committee work. Thorough discussion and report was provided on each item, including any respective consent items. And before we move to voting on the item, we have a number of items that likely need clarification from our discussion yesterday. And so to begin with, I'd like to call on Ms. Amy White, chair of the EICS committee, to clarify the motion for EICS 3. Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Davis. If you'll, I'm navigating screens. Board members, I'd like for you to go back to EICS 3, if you don't mind. If you'll remember, we had a discussion yesterday about one of our charter schools, and I do so apologize. My computer is not, internet's not cooperating.
Yeah, Ms. White, it's Three Rivers Academy.
Yes, sir. I'm just trying to get to that. Okay. Anyway, yesterday for EICS 3, we had a discussion about Three River Academy and its request to move to Windsor. And also there was a request about stipulations that had been previously added to that school. And we have new wording for the recommendation. And so board members, I'll turn your attention to that. And it simply states that the school, SBE approves Three Rivers Academy's request to relocate contingent upon the Office of Charter Schools receipt of the number one, the Educational Certificate of Occupancy. The growth stipulation for 2019-2020 has been removed because of lack of data. However, Three Rivers must submit benchmark data from the previous school year, 2019 and 2020, as obtained for the upcoming school year 2020 to 21. In addition, Three Rivers Academy must meet growth for the 2021 school year. For the 2021 school year, Three Rivers Academy must enroll the statutorily required 80 students based on the 20-day ADM collected through the Department of Public Instruction. So that includes the language that it resulted as a result of our discussion yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. White. Any questions on that clarified motion? Hearing none, I now call on Mr. Buxton to clarify SLA 1 and SLA 2 from yesterday's discussion. Mr. Buxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me go, Ms. Townsend-Smith, actually, if you could go to SLA 2. Sorry about that. I think it'll be easier in this order. Just as with Ms. White's amended motion, if you go to the bottom of the SLA 2 agenda item, you'll see our amended motion for a birth through 3 reading definition. You will see the language that Dr. Stegall read yesterday in its entirety. You will also see the preface that had always accompanied this and which was in the department's PowerPoint presentation. If someone would like for me to read it, I will, but given that it is there and it was read yesterday, I'll, for efficiency's sake, not do that unless asked. Hearing no request to read, I would only add that appreciation to the board and the department for considering this as a B3 definition, and while our responsibilities are clearly largely contained to grades K through 3, it does allow for better alignment with our post-secondary partners and DHHS partners who provide important aligned services to younger students or to teachers preparing to teach younger students. So I thank you for that indulgence. SLA 1, our social studies standards adoption item. I want to review where I think we ended up yesterday and suggest an amended motion. And given the feedback we've received, and significant feedback we've received from teachers, parents, school districts, and students, some in person yesterday or virtually with us yesterday, the substance of the conversations we've had at our virtual board table over the past 3 months on the item, including some that go even further back than that, but especially in the past couple months. And the opportunity we have within the timeline that exists to improve upon the standards running up to implementation in 2021, 2022. Without objection, I'd suggest that we allow the department additional time to continue its work to improve the K-8 and high school social studies and history standards and bring us back in the February-March timeframe a revised set of standards for approval, as well as the guidance documents that the department will use to support the field's implementation of the standards. And given that that is acceptable to my colleagues, I would revise the motion for SLA 1 to recommend approval of the revision to our high school graduation requirement, grad-004, as outlined in the department's draft policy that's included under this agenda item for the entering classes of 2020, 2021 and following. And you can find that draft policy, thank you, Ms. Townsend Smith, at the bottom of this item. Mr. Chairman, that would be my revised motion. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Buxton on SLA 1 or 2?
This is Olivia, Chair Davis.
Dr. Oxendine.
Just a point that I would like to make, and I'd hope without having to rewrite the motion, that there could be a way to address my wish. And that is that I heard Mr. Buxton say something about the department coming back before the board, perhaps in early spring, February, early spring, with the new work. I would want to have the department present to the board before that time so that we all have a sense of the process that's in play and a little bit about how this is beginning to look. I believe waiting until 2021 might be a bit too far down the road to make any kind of suggested changes.
Dr. Oxendine, I think that's a wise point, process point, and I don't think we need to amend the motion since the motion will pertain to the high school graduation requirements. But in terms of our request for the department to take additional time, that you and Ms. Kamnitz, I think, could stipulate that you would like to see some work in the process and the work in progress at some time in the fall. And that should be the board's expectation as recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. That's a very important point. Thank you for giving me a minute.
Absolutely. I appreciate you raising it.
Any other questions on SLA 1 and 2? Hearing none, now I'd like to call on Vice Chair Duncan to clarify the motion on BizOp 5. And before he starts, I'll just share with colleagues that we will have a separate vote for BizOp 2. So we'll deal with that one in just a moment. But BizOp 5. Mr. Duncan?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davis. I'd like to make a motion in light of the discussion that we had in 4 parts. The first part is that the board adopt the early grade reading proficiency policy, ERC 085. Second, that the board approve as approved vendors for the 2020 read to achieve formative diagnostic assessment, iStation, Northwest Evaluation System, and STAR Early system, again, as designated by the department in terms of the specific products necessary. And iReady, with iReady having the caveat that that's pending finalization of its EVOS data verification, which is still in process, be complete in a roughly 2-week period or less. That those 4 be passed as approved vendors, assuming iReady does in fact get that finalization approval from staff on its EVOS data. Third, if any other entity on the list ultimately gets Lexile linkage and otherwise gets EVOS compliant data verification, that they can certainly come to the board seeking approval at some later time, but with the understanding for our districts that that's not likely to happen before the start of at least the jumpstart school period, and perhaps not before the start of school. And fourth, that the board supports a full procurement process to go forward with board and department and with substantial input from the field, a robust process that aims for a decision for a 3-year contract for a vendor to be made sometime between February and April of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Any questions on that motion? Hearing none, then I seek a motion to approve the following items. The June 3rd and 4th, 2020 meeting minutes, the June 11th and 30th, 2020 meeting minutes, and EICS 1 through 3, SLA 1, 2, and 4, BizOp 1, 3, and 5, ESNP 2, and the State Board of Education 2021 meeting calendar. Is there a motion?
So move. It's Mr. Ford.
Motion by Mr. Ford. Is there a second?
Second, Donna.
Second by Dr. Tipton Rogers. Any questions or discussion on this motion?
Chair Davis, I do have a quick question. This is not, we are still going to have a call vote on one of these items. Is that correct?
We will have a separate vote on BizOp 2.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Any other questions or discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith, we call the roll to capture the vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine,
Yes.
Ms. Chemnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Chastain,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. We'll now proceed to our final item, which is BizOp 2, and I'll note for the record that Ms. Chemnitz has recused herself from BizOp 2. Mr. Duncan, can you clarify the motion for BizOp 2?
The motion that I would make would be that the board approve funding under the CARES Act for the 10% allowed by law to be utilized by the department and the SEA, consistent with the proposal that totals $37,649,603. Well, that would be the motion. After the motion's finished, obviously there's another proposal that's been made by the department, and so that would be my motion. And I understand that that people are put in the place of making a decision as between two, but that would be my motion. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, Mr. Duncan, your recommendation, your motion is to approve the proposal labeled BizOp proposal, totaling the amount you referred to.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on, well, so that's the motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second, Wendell Hall.
Second by Mr. Hall. Questions and discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith, we call the roll to capture the vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine,
Most regrettably, no.
Mr. Keenan,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. White,
No.
Mr. Chastain,
No.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
7-3, passed.
Okay, motion carries. So this concludes our action items today. My thanks to all staff and presenters for this July 9th, 2020 meeting. As we focus on a new school year with a lot of unknowns, we'll continue to engage with stakeholders and public health officials to ensure we're prepared to accept students and staff in our schools safely this coming school year. I now ask for a motion to adjourn this July 9th, 2020 meeting.
Move to adjourn, Amy White.
Motion by Ms. White.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hall. Dr. Townsend Smith.
Yes, sir. Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Camnett?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Chastain? Mr. Chastain? Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis? It's unanimous.
Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.